friends, welcome back to Food Prep Guide. It is almost February as of the time of this filming. I cannot believe that, but what that means is that we are smack dab in the middle of garden planning season so that we can hit the ground running as soon as spring comes. Today I want to bring you my 2025 garden plan. I have it all written out and drawn out and labeled here. I'm gonna resituate the camera so that you can see my picture really well, and we'll talk about it. Before we dig into that, I just want to briefly mention my two primary goals for this year's garden because it really dictated what I'm growing and how I've laid it out and all of that. So the number one goal is to finally meet our goal that we've been working towards for years, which is being vegetable sufficient, meaning not having to buy any vegetables from the grocery store. We are so close to meeting that goal. The only thing kind of holding us back is that we continue to not grow enough onions or tomatoes. So this year I am ramping up the onions and tomatoes again. I increased them last year. I'm increasing them even more this year, and potatoes. Onions, potatoes, and tomatoes. We are ramping up production of all three of those. And then the other thing I want to mention is in order to be completely vegetable self-sufficient, I would have to be able to grow broccoli and cauliflower in pretty large amounts for the whole year. And that's just not possible for me here in the South. It's a cool weather crop. We can grow it in fall and winter, but it doesn't preserve well. At least we don't like it in all the different ways that it can be preserved. We don't like the texture. It is almost solely used in salads and roasted vegetable sheets, baking sheets, you know, and none of the food preservation methods really suit that. So we still have to buy broccoli and cauliflower from the store. I think we'll probably always have to do that in the off season. So I'm not considering that as part of my goals of being vegetable self-sufficient. But that is a huge goal that has dictated the plan that you're about to see. The second thing that dictates the garden plan you're about to see is I want to vastly increase the amount of options that I have at my disposal for flavoring all of the oats products that we create or that we make, all the yogurt flavorings, all the muffins, the baked goods. I want to have so many different flavor options to be able to make those things that we make all the time without it being boring and leading to food fatigue because we're eating the same type of flavors over and over again. So I'm introducing several things into the garden this year to kind of combat that and give us more diversity when it comes to flavoring all of our snacks and breakfasts and desserts and all of that. Okay, let's go ahead and jump into it. If you would like help planning a productive garden, scroll down to the description box of this video and click this link for a free garden printable. We calculated quantities for a year's supply of the most common garden vegetables and organized them into a neat chart to help you plan. We'll send it straight to your inbox. If you're new here, we invite you to subscribe and hit that notification bell so you don't miss any of our upcoming tutorials on gardening and food preservation, food storage, and more. Okay, here is my plan. My garden is one really big rectangle. It's approximately 50 feet wide by about 200 feet long. We have doors, an entrance here, and then we have a little cinder block step here where we have cut the inner fence, and everything along this back wall is wood chips. It's just about 4 feet deep of nothing but wood chips. So we're a little bit limited in what we can grow there. In case you don't know, annual vegetables do not grow well in wood chips that aren't totally composted, and these wood chips are not totally composted. But berries do great in them, and sweet potatoes do fantastic in them. That was an experiment we did 2 years ago that turned out incredible. If you missed that video and you're looking for ways to grow sweet potatoes, I highly recommend growing them in wood chips. It was a lot of fun. But anyway, so in this wood chip area back here, this is pretty simple, so we'll just start here. That's where we have our strawberry patch. We have our blueberry trees here, or not trees, but bushes. This is going to be a new addition this year, is raspberries. This was an addition to help me meet my goal of having lots of different flavor options for all the things I mentioned in the introduction. We'll add a trellis that extends from this inner fence here all the way to the outer fence. We have an inner fence because our original garden used to end here, and then it used to end here. And so we extended the fence here and then all the way out here, but we kept that interior fence right here. So we're going to do a trellis from this interior fence all the way to the outer fence, and that will be our raspberries. I'm getting some thornless raspberry cuttings from Stark Brothers this year. We will be doing a separate video where a seed chat video where I will show you the exact varieties of each of the individual things that we're talking about here. I'm not going to go super in-depth into that in this video because I want to be able to have those seed packets to show you the names and read off some details and stuff like that. And I'm still waiting on some seed packets to come in the mail, but that video will be posted shortly. But I do know that I'm getting those from Stark Brothers. The wood chips, the sweet potatoes and the wood chips did so well last year. I'm going to continue doing that this year. So those won't be planted until like July, so that'll just remain empty for now. Okay, let's come back over here to the entrance because that's kind of how I walk through my garden. Real quick, so this is just a pathway that stays open. Then we have a walkway that stays open, that stretches the entire length of the garden. And then over here last year, I did a flower wall all along this back fence, and it worked so well. I absolutely loved it, and I'm going to repeat that again this year and just do some different flowers. Over here, real quick, we have a table. This is my drying table, my processing table. It has a layer of screens so that water and dirt and stuff can fall through and my vegetables can stay on top. We'll have a cinder block bed here that will be all of our culinary herbs. And then we can walk, we have a walkway here, and of course we can walk in between each of all the rows and beds that you see here. Okay, so this first row is kind of a shorter row, and I'm going to do extra peppers. I have a full 50-foot row of peppers here, but we have last year we had a bumper crop of peppers, and two things to note about that. Number one, I learned a lot about different ways to use peppers in foods that we already love and enjoy. So I can put a bumper crop of peppers to really good use, but I also know from experience that if I have a bumper crop of peppers one year, it's highly unlikely that I will have a bumper crop the next year. So I'm kind of going into this year and kind of thinking it's not going to be a bumper crop year of peppers. So I'm thinking I'm going to need to grow extra just to get the same amount that I did last year out of this 150-foot row. That's just based on experience in past years, and I think it's probably what's going to be necessary. So this next row is going to be, I'm going to be growing Gotta Have It corn from Gurney's this year. I'm really excited about it. I'm going to test out a portion of the Three Sisters garden where you grow the corn and you allow pole green beans to grow up the stalks of the corn, where the stalks of the corn essentially act as the trellis. For the green beans, I'm just leaving out the squash part. That's the other third sister, and I'm just kind of leaving that out for now. I'm going to test it out on this full 50-foot row here, just as a test, because corn does not grow very well in a straight row. You really need to grow it in blocks to help with pollination. But since this is a test, I'm just going to go ahead and do the one row, and I will hand pollinate as best I can, just to kind of increase my odds. But really, the kind of goal is to, over here you see I have 4 50-foot rows. This year, or last year, we had our onions here, 2 50-foot rows, one for white and one for red. So this year I'm doing 3 for white and 1 for red on these 50-foot rows here. But onions get pulled the first week of June, which gives me plenty of time to get a second row or get a second crop of corn. So I'm going to use this test, and if it goes well, then when the onions get pulled from this patch here, which is 4 50-foot rows, then I'm going to seed this whole section with corn and green beans, allowing those pole green beans to climb up the stalks of the corn. So that's why I have onions and alyssum here. That's the sweet alyssum. I hope I'm pronouncing that right. It might be alyssum, I'm not sure. But it is just an excellent pollinator crop. I cannot recommend it more highly. I've only learned about it maybe 2 years ago, and it smells lovely, and it brings in all of those friendly pollinators that we need for the garden. So you will see that I will have it sprinkled out all over the place. But I'm definitely going to put it into the onions, because what I found last year in doing these 2 50-foot row of onions is that weeds were an issue. Even though I'm using weed fabric, it was still an issue. Pretty much everywhere sunlight was touching, patches of weeds would grow up through the holes where the onions were and start spreading. So what I'm going to do is companion plant the onions with the sweet alyssum this year, in hopes that this is going to act as a ground cover to kind of suppress the weeds that could potentially grow up around those onion holes, because it does essentially act as a ground cover. It spreads out beautifully. So corn test with the green beans, and then if it's successful, move it over to here in June. So that kind of leaves us to this row. I'm still going to be doing basil and parsley. I'm going to be adding the alyssum to the basil and parsley row. I have flipped these. So last year this was cabbage, this was peppers, this was basil and parsley. So I'm switching those so that I'm not growing the same thing in the same holes, even though I'm still going to be adding amendments and such to help with that. But I do definitely need a 50-foot row of the basil and parsley together because we use so much of it. A full row of peppers, just like we did last year. I've already mentioned why I'm doing 2 extras for that reason for the bumper crop. I'm thinking I'm not going to get a bumper crop this year. We talked about the onions. So here I have 2 short, probably 20-foot rows of melons. That's not something that we preserve. That's just for fresh eating. My family really loves cantaloupe and watermelon. And so I'm just going to grow those for fresh eating for the family. Over here we have a short row, I would estimate probably 15 feet, and it has a trellis on it, which is what this is. I'm going to grow our snap peas, which we use for fresh snacking early in the spring. Those are actually going to go into the ground at the end of February, so not long from now. And we will just enjoy snacking on those while the roots of the snow peas fix nitrogen into the soil in preparation for us to plant tomatoes in late April, early May. So snow peas for now, then we'll switch over to tomatoes. The potatoes, I'm growing 2 50-foot rows of potatoes this year in hopes that we will meet our goal finally. Again, I'm going to be companion planting with the sweet alyssum because it's such a great companion plant for potatoes as well as onions and several other things. So now we come to our trellis tunnels. If you've seen our Garden Village videos, you have seen these in action. They're a lot closer in real life. This drawing is not to scale by any means. But basically I'm switching my tunnels. So this was my tomato tunnel last year. I'm going to make this my tomato tunnel this year. We'll talk about all the different varieties in detail in another video, but basically I'm extremely excited to try the Hungarian Heart and the super sauce tomatoes from Burpee and the Marzanera. That is a cousin of the San Marzano. It's supposed to be more productive than the San Marzano, but essentially the same shape and flavor. Over here, I'm going to be doing our 2 trellises of the zucchini rampicante like we always do, 2 trellises of the pickling cucumbers like we always do, and I'm going to cut down to only 1 trellis of green beans because I'm doing the test with the green beans and corn over here. And I'm going to do an extra super sauce tomato here, essentially trying to, last year we had like this trellis of tomatoes, so we're adding a trellis of tomatoes here and doing 1 trellis of tomatoes here, and I'm hoping maybe that'll give us enough. If not, I will do like I always do, which is utilize number 10 cans of tomato sauce from the store to do some of my recipes, and we have plenty of videos on that on the channel if you haven't seen those. Just some structural things. We have a shed here, which is why there's no trellis here, because I can't open my door if I have a trellis there. This is a very large rain catchment barrel, and we have started building the platform. We ran into issues, we had to stop, but essentially it will be a 5 to 6 foot platform with a very large, I don't remember how many gallons, I want to say 300 gallons, but I'm not sure, tank that catches water, and the idea is that it will gravity feed water the trellises here. The trellises are a lot closer together and a lot closer to this than what it looks like, so it is totally realistic for this gravity feed system to water these 2 trellises here, even though it might not look like it on camera. I have GS here, stands for green stalk. I'm thinking I'll put my green stalk right next to the water barrel because I have trouble keeping my green stalks watered, and that is a real issue because they do dry out because they're tiered, they're vertical. Anything that you have in a pot or a container is going to require much more water and attention than anything in the ground. And I just keep not watering this properly. So I'm thinking maybe If I put it here, maybe that'll encourage me to remember to water it. But also, I don't know what I'm going to plant there. Everything that you see here is pretty much everything that I need. And I don't really have anything extra planned for the green stock. So if you'll have any ideas for anything that I could add to the green stock, please drop them in the comments below. I did forget to mention these lines down here represent my cinder block beds. This trellis has cinder block beds that run down the center of all of them. All of our salad greens, spinach, kale, anything that would go into a salad is under these tunnels right here. And then I have 2 to 3 tunnels worth of carrots, and that's where we do our carrots. I have another cinder block bed under these trellises. That's where we grow our garlic. And I have extended the cinder block bed here, and I think that's where we're going to do our stevia and our tea herbs here. So I guess I am missing my medicinal herb area. I have my culinary herb area. Right now we have medicinal herbs that grow wild on the property. We have mullein, yarrow, and elderberry. And I just let those grow, you know, where they naturally want to grow, so they're not really in my garden. But I would like to introduce maybe a few more medicinal herbs, and maybe that would be good for the green stock. I don't know. Share your ideas. Please, please, please. So this over here currently is basically like a forest. It is 3-4 foot tall hay and weed patch right now that needs to be mowed down. I'm going to take all the weed fabric from here. I'm not taking it up from here. I'm just extending the weed fabric all the way up here because it worked so beautifully last year. It was one of the best gardens that I've ever had as far as how much time I had to dedicate to it. And as my kids get older and as I just continue working, like, it is really valuable to me to not have to spend as much time in the garden. And that weed fabric was just incredible in saving me time. So I am going to extend it all the way over here. I don't know yet if these are going to be raised beds or in-ground beds, but the plan is the same regardless. And that is, I'm adding berries, huckleberries and blackberries. Now this is in quotes because it's not a true blackberry. And I'm not sure how to pronounce it, but it's something like Schwarzenbergen blackberries. Again, not a true blackberry, but they look like blackberries, they taste like blackberries, they produce incredibly well like blackberries, so I'm just calling them blackberries, and it's what we will use for those. I'm going to do a whole about 40-foot row of both of those here. Leave space for a walkway. I'm going to have some more potatoes here because I'm not 100% sure if this is going to cut it for our year's supply. I'm kind of thinking it won't. So I'm planning on doing another potato patch over here. Now this is a strange one, dandelions. It's considered a weed by so many people, but it is a really great way to make something that tastes like honey. You can make dandelion jelly, you can make dandelion syrup, which is what we want to do. We want to make dandelion syrup, and I want to use that for my flavorings for all the things that I mentioned in the introduction of this video. So I am actually dedicating an entire bed just to dandelions. I want to grow them in very large quantities, and I want to be able to put up about 24 half pints of syrup, of dandelion syrup from this one bed. A lot of the dandelions, we don't have dandelions that grow wild really around here. They will grow in people's yards, but then people spray them with pesticides, so it's not an option to call up some friends or neighbors or something and go pick there because pretty much everyone sprays. So I am actually growing what many would consider a weed in one of my beds here. I think that might be it. We've got our culinary herbs here: thyme, rosemary, oregano. I'm going to be adding some bunching onions. We've done some chives in the past and some green onions. I'm going to be doing the Ishikura bunching onions. I will probably use that as a companion and intersperse that anywhere where onions are a good companion for any of these places. I'll probably just plug those in all throughout here, but also some in the culinary portion as well. Okay, y'all, that is it. That basically sums up my garden plan for 2025. Hopefully this will help us meet our goals of being vegetable sufficient, with the exception of broccoli and cauliflower. Those are must-haves in our family, but just can't grow them year-round. Hope that was helpful to you, and stay tuned for the seed chat video where I will show you all the different varieties that we are growing based on everything you see here. That's all for today, and we'll see you next time. Bye!